the country past the city limit sign.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to Hollywood Remembers. Today, we honor the American stars we've recently lost, along with beloved figures who touched lives around the world. If this tribute means something to you, please consider liking the video. Your support helps us continue sharing these stories with the care and respect they deserve. Now, let's begin.
Robert Duvall is gone, 95 years old, and somehow that still doesn't feel like enough time. He wasn't the flashiest name in Hollywood, never tried to be. But if you sat down in a movie theater any time between the early 60s and last decade, chances are he was there, quiet, present, completely real on screen. That was his gift. He made you forget you were watching acting. Most people remember him from The Godfather, Tom Hagen, the consigliere. Cool, measured, loyal. That was 1972, and he was already the kind of performer other actors studied. Then came Apocalypse Now, 1979. I love the smell of napalm in the morning. You didn't forget that line. Nobody did. But it was Tender Mercies, 1983, that got him the Oscar. A broken country singer trying to piece his life back together in rural Texas. Simple story. No explosions, no big speeches, just a man and his choices. That performance hit different if you lived through those years. You knew that guy. He started out on Long Island stages in the early 50s, did his army service, paid his dues the old-fashioned way, before fame meant anything easy. His family confirmed the news. No elaborate statement, just the loss, plain and real. Some actors fill a room. Robert Duvall filled something bigger. Decades, memories, whole chapters of American life. That kind doesn't come around twice.
Tom Noonan is gone, 74 years old. And if that name doesn't ring a bell right away, his face certainly does. He was the kind of actor you felt before you understood why. 6'4", quiet off-screen, terrifying on it. Not because he was loud, because he wasn't. That stillness, that's what got under your skin. If you watched Manhunter back in 1986, you remember Francis Dolarhyde. Michael Mann's film came out the same summer Top Gun was everywhere, and somehow this slow, unsettling thriller about a serial killer carved out its own dark corner of the decade. Noonan played Dolarhyde with a gentleness that made the whole thing worse, and that's hard to do. Most actors go big with evil. He went quiet. Then came The Monster Squad in 1987, Frankenstein's monster of all things, and he brought something almost tender to it. Kids who grew up on that movie never forgot him. RoboCop 2, 1990, Kane, another villain, another performance that stuck. He also wrote and directed, quietly built a body of work on his own terms, away from the studio machine. That takes a certain kind of backbone. Tributes have been coming in from people who worked with him, grew up watching him, never quite shook him loose from their memories. 74 is too soon, no other way to say it. Some presences are irreplaceable. His was one of them.
Willie Colón is gone, 75 years old. And if you know anything about what happened to Latin music in New York City starting in the late 60s, you know what that means. He was born in the Bronx, grew up in a neighborhood where music wasn't background noise, it was survival, identity, the whole thing. He picked up the trombone as a teenager and never really put it down. By the time he was 17, he was recording for Fania Records. 17! That label, that era, Fania was to salsa what Motown was to soul, and Colón was right there at the center of it. His partnership with Hector Lavoe through the early 70s produced some of the most alive music of that decade. El Malo, Calle Luna, Calle Sol, Cosa Nuestra. If those titles mean something to you, you already understand the loss. But he wasn't just a musician. He used his platform the way very few artists bothered to back then, pushing back on poverty, on political corruption, on the things people in his community actually lived with every day. That mattered, still does. He sang, wrote, produced, acted, wore a lot of hats and wore them well. The tributes calling him a legend aren't wrong, but legend can feel distant. Willie Colón felt close, like someone from your block who made it and never forgot where it came from. 75 years. Not enough.
Coleman, Texas. A small dot on a map most people drive past without blinking. Hot summers, quiet winters. The kind of place where life moves slow but hits hard. Ronald Gene Dunn was born there on June 1, 1953, a summer baby, a Texas boy from the start. His father, Jesse Eugene Dunn, was a man of few words and strong opinions. His mother, Gladys Inez Thurman Dunn, was the kind of woman who held everything together without anyone noticing she was doing it. That's how it worked in homes like theirs. You didn't talk about struggle. You just kept going. Ronnie, because nobody ever really called him Ronald, grew up in a world where music wasn't a career choice. It was just something that existed. On the radio, in the church pews, humming through the walls of small houses on quiet streets. He heard it everywhere. And somewhere along the way, he stopped just hearing it and started feeling it. That's the difference, isn't it? Some people listen to music. Ronnie Dunn absorbed it. He wasn't handed anything. Coleman wasn't the kind of place that produced celebrities. It produced farmers, workers, people who made do. And Ronnie made do too for a long time. He played in honky-tonks and small bars, places where the crowd wasn't always paying attention, where the cigarette smoke was thick enough to chew. He learned how to hold a room, or how to keep trying even when a room didn't want to be held. His voice was always there, that deep, aching, distinctive sound that would later stop people mid-conversation the moment it came through a speaker. But in those early years, he was just a young man from West Texas trying to figure out where he fit. He studied at Abilene Christian University for a while, tried to find a different path, maybe a safer one, but music kept pulling him back. It wasn't ambition exactly. It was more like necessity, like he didn't have a choice in the matter. And maybe he didn't. Some people are built for one thing. Ronnie Dunn was built to sing. And all those early years, the small stages, the uncertain nights, the slow grind and effort of it, they weren't delays, they were preparation. He just didn't know it yet. Nobody saw it coming, not really. Kix Brooks and Ronnie Dunn didn't know each other well when Arista Nashville essentially introduced them and said, "Try this." It was 1990. The music industry had a habit of making bets on people. This one paid off in ways nobody could have predicted. Brooks and Dunn debuted with Brand New Man in 1991, and country music was never quite the same again. That album hit like a freight train. The title track, the energy, the swagger, it was something fresh, something that felt alive. Ronnie's voice carried the kind of raw emotion that made women pull over on the highway just to listen to a song all the way through. You know that feeling, when a song finds you instead of the other way around. They became the best-selling country duo in history. That's not a small thing. 23 #1 hits, multiple CMA Duo of the Year awards, year after year after year. They weren't just successful, they were dominant. But here's what people sometimes forget about Ronnie during those years. Behind all that success, he was a man still figuring himself out. Fame came fast. The road was relentless. Hundreds of shows a year. Cities blurring together, the pressure of maintaining something that the whole world had decided to love. He married Janine in 1990, right as everything was exploding. Together, they built a life in the middle of a hurricane. 3 children, Haley, Jesse, and Whitney. A family growing up alongside a career that never really slowed down long enough to breathe. Ronnie was never the loudest personality in the room off stage. Kix had that energy. Ronnie was quieter, more internal, the kind of man who processed things slowly and deeply. That came through in his songwriting, in the way he approached a lyric like it actually mattered what words he chose. And it did matter. Songs like Neon Moon, My Maria, Believe, these weren't just radio hits, they were moments people lived inside. Weddings, funerals,
long drives home after hard days. That's a different kind of legacy, and Ronnie Dunn earned every bit of it.
In 2010, Brooks and Dunn announced they were calling it. After 2 decades together, the duo would dissolve. They called it a retirement. The industry called it the end of an era. Fans called it heartbreaking. For Ronnie, it was something more complicated than all of that. He had spent 20 years being one half of something enormous. Now he had to figure out who he was as a whole. That's not easy for anyone. It's especially hard when the world has a very specific idea of who you are and where you belong. His first solo album came in 2011, Ronnie Dunn, self-titled. There's something vulnerable about that choice, putting your own name on something and saying, "This is just me now." No partnership to lean on, no established formula, just a man and his voice and whatever he had left to say. The album was good, critically respected, but the commercial landscape had shifted. Country music in 2011 was not country music in 1993. Younger artists, newer sounds, a different kind of radio. Ronnie was navigating a world that had moved while he was busy being successful inside it. It wasn't a fall exactly, but it was a reckoning. There were quiet years, years where he wasn't dominating charts or filling arenas, years where the phone wasn't ringing quite as loud. For a man who had known almost nothing but massive success for 2 decades, that silence must have been disorienting. He didn't talk about it much publicly. That's consistent with who he is, private, measured, not inclined toward drama. But you don't have to say something for it to be real. The music from that period carries weight, a different kind of weight than the Brooks and Dunn era, more searching, more personal. And then there was his faith. Ronnie has spoken openly about his Christian beliefs throughout his life. In the harder seasons, that foundation held. It's easy to be faithful when things are good. It's something else entirely when you're standing in the quiet, wondering what comes next. He kept writing, kept performing, kept showing up. That matters more than most people realize.
Brooks and Dunn came back together in 2015, and the world exhaled. But Ronnie Dunn at 72 is not the same man who walked onto that stage in 1991. He's more settled, more certain of what he values and what he doesn't, more willing to be still. He and Janine have been married now for 35 years. That's its own kind of accomplishment, maybe the one that says the most about who he really is. The road tests a marriage in ways nothing else can. They built something that lasted. His children are grown, his grandchildren are growing. The man who once played smoky honky-tonks in Texas is now someone's grandfather, and somehow that feels exactly right. He still performs, still writes, still carries that voice around like it belongs to him, because it does. When Ronnie Dunn sings, something happens in the room. It's hard to explain if you haven't felt it, and completely unnecessary to explain if you have. For women who grew up listening to Brooks and Dunn through the 90s, raising kids, building marriages, surviving whatever life dropped on them, Ronnie's music was a companion. Neon moon on a Friday night when the week had been too long. Believe when someone they loved was slipping away. That's not just entertainment, that's relationship. He represents something that doesn't get talked about enough in country music: consistency, integrity, the willingness to do the work for decades without burning everything down or reinventing yourself into someone unrecognizable. Ronnie Dunn is still Ronnie Dunn, a boy from Coleman, Texas, who had something real inside him and spent his whole life figuring out how to give it away. And he's not finished. The story doesn't end here. It just keeps going, the way good music always does, playing somewhere right now in someone's kitchen, in someone's car, in someone's memory of a moment that still means everything. That voice, still out there, still carrying.